In this video, we'll talk about using the HTTP service to ingest external data into our application. So let's actually run the application and see exactly how it behaves before we go ahead and look at the code behind it. So we've got our mobile RSS reader here, and if we go to feed, it goes through, it loads in the RSS. We can go through the different pieces here, and any of these we click on, we can then read full article, and it takes us to the actual article itself. This feed is just going to my personal blog here, so you can go through and then read the entire article as it's meant to be. So you might be asking, well, how do you get an RSS feed for something like this? Usually, especially if it's WordPress like this, you can just go to page source here, and you'll notice that there's a link that is marked as type application/RSS and XML. And this is the actual feed itself. So if we click on the feed, it brings out the full feed. So this is a standard RSS feed in XML format. So that's what we're going to feed into our application. A lot of websites, they will expose the feed in a friendlier way through like an RSS button or something like that. It all depends. But what we're going to do is go to our feed view, because that's where all of this happens. And down here, we're going to ignore everything in the script tag for now. But we've got this declarations tag here. And then within our declarations tag, we have an HTTP service object. So the declarations tag is basically for stuff like services that aren't entirely visual, but do have components attributed to them. So here is an HTTP service component that we have to declare inside of a declarations node. So in here we give it an ID so we can talk to it later on. We pass in a URL, which is feed URL here. And of course, seeing these braces, we know that data binding is in effect. If we go up to find where that lives, we can see that it's declared inside of our script tag. So bindable allows us to bind it to our visual components or other components as well. You can also see here that we're setting it to be a private variable called feed URL. It's a string, and then here is that actual feed URL as a string that we grabbed from the website. So that basically binds it to this URL property of our HTTP service. And then we also need a fault and result handler. So on here, we say onFeed fault and onFeed result. So whenever anything goes wrong, onFeed fault will fire. And when we get the results, if things go right and are successful, we'll get those results, we'll get notification inside of the onFeed result. So going back up to our script tag. So fx script, this is where you can declare any sort of action script logic inside of your Flex application without having to create a separate set of action script classes to do it. You can do it right inside of your MXML. And for an application as simple as this, it just makes sense. So I have a number of things going on here. One thing is that I'm actually importing a text converter. I'll go into this a little bit later on. But it basically allows us to convert weird characters and HTML flows and things like that to something that's a little more readable. You'll notice here that we have another bindable variable called feed status. And feed status is actually bound to our title. So that's how we can let people know that it's going to get the feed, that it was successful in getting the feed, and so forth. So you can see here when we initialize the application, and this init function is actually called upon creation complete for this view. So when this feed view is created, basically, it invokes this function called init. So here's where we can do anything that we want to have happen automatically when somebody goes into this view. So if somebody clicks on feed in the tab navigator, this automatically will fire off. So here we set our feed status to loading RSS, and then we say feed service.send. Now, feed service is already declared down here. As we just saw, it's our HTTP service. And send is going to go and go try to grab that URL, the data associated with that. It's going to go out to that feed. If there's something wrong, so, if I had misspelling here, if the website was down, it'll come back and say, hey, there's a problem with this. So tough. But if it does come back correctly, then it's good news for us because we'll be able to actually use that in some way. And we'll see that in the next video.